Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a world blanketed in white, where the sea groans under slabs of ice and a fire crackles low inside a tiny smoke-stained dome. Out here, on a wind-blasted Arctic island, the only thing warmer than the hearth is the gossip. Life is quiet, dangerous, and surprisingly funny. Just don't forget, you probably wouldn't survive a single morning here without losing a few fingers. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you're listening. Always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. A soft blue-gray light pushes under a sealskin flap as the first groggy grunt comes from beneath the furs. The hut is dark, smoky, and warmer than you'd expect, at least compared to the frozen death party happening just outside. Inside, it smells like burnt driftwood, wet dog, and something fishy. You get used to it, eventually. The family of 6 stirs slowly. There's Colic, the father, already reaching for a boot stuffed with moss insulation. Naya, the mother, stretches beside him, her hair bound tightly under a caribou hide cap. 2 kids groan awake and start the first great challenge of the day, locating socks in the dark. Their home is not an igloo, not exactly. This island is too windy and rocky for perfectly packed snow domes year-round. Instead, they live in a semi-subterranean hut, dug partly into the ground for insulation. The walls are built from stacked stones, sod, and whale bones, bent into ribs above the living space. A skylight, if you can call a smoke hole a skylight, lets out just enough smoke to prevent total asphyxiation. Breakfast isn't a meal, it's a strategy. You eat something high-fat and room temperature while suiting up. Today, that's seal blubber sliced with an obsidian-edged knife, dipped in coagulated blood, and chased with snowmelt warmed over embers. Keto-friendly. While they eat, Calic checks the weather the old-fashioned way, by sticking his head outside and instantly regretting it. The wind is brutal. A fine powder of snow blasts sideways across the stone path leading to the storage pit. He sighs. It's another day for inside jobs. On the good days, men might head out to sea in skin-covered kayaks to hunt seal or narwhal. But today, the dogs are curled into frozen cinnamon rolls, and not even the fish look eager to be caught. Still, life continues. Naya scrubs sealskin boots with a pumice stone made from frozen sand and teeth. The girls take turns plucking tiny bones from last night's fish stew to add to the amulet bag, hanging near the doorway. Each bone represents a wish, or maybe a joke, depending on who you ask. One geographic truth most forget. Not all Arctic islands are made equal. Some, like those off the Siberian coast, get hit by storms so violent they reshape the very shoreline. Others, like remote Greenlandic outposts, see such consistent daylight. In summer, you'd think someone left the sky lamp on. But for this little clan, perched somewhere in the high Canadian Arctic, winter lasts longer than most relationships. While the outside world may look lifeless, this island hides secrets. Beneath the snow crust, lichen creeps along buried rocks. Arctic foxes dart through cracks in the cliffs, tails puffed like snowballs. And overhead, birds, with names like thick-billed murre and glaucous gull, scream arguments in dialects no human wants to understand. Inside, the family gets to work. The men begin crafting fish hooks from walrus tusks, shaped like tiny question marks. The women scrape hair from dried hides to make waterproof boots. It's labor that never ends because snow doesn't care how productive you were yesterday. Every now and then, someone opens the storage pit. It's a small cellar dug into the permafrost, lined with rocks and sealed with slabs of frozen meat. Inside, an entire seal, halved fish, and a horrifying experiment involving puffin fermented in a seal's stomach. Yes, that was intentional. And yes, it smells like a dare. Even now, scientists still argue about the exact mechanics of early Arctic food preservation. Did they rely more on freezing or fermentation? Did every clan bury its meat the same way? What's agreed upon is that the human body here runs on fat, lots of it. A modern nutritionist would cry, then pass out. The hut darkens again as a fresh cloud rolls in, and the sound of cracking ice echoes from the cliffs. Someone farts, the dogs growl, the wind howls louder. It's hard to tell if nature is angry or just bored. By mid-afternoon, which feels like 10 a.m., or maybe midnight, who can tell, the group takes a break. That means sitting silently, chewing old dried fish, and staring at the fire. This is actually a social ritual. Talking would ruin it. Every few hours, someone checks the seal traps near the shore. They're simple, a hole in the ice with a noose of sinew. If lucky, a seal comes up for air and gets an unfortunate surprise. But luck is rare this time of year. Back inside, a young boy mimics his father's movements, holding a carved wooden knife and trying to slice a piece of air. Naya notices and smiles softly. In this land, play is never just play. It's rehearsal for survival. And yet, despite the brutal weather, the monotonous food, and the constant threat of frostbite in places you didn't know could freeze, there's laughter. Someone makes a joke about slipping on caribou poop. Another pretends to mishear the word for shaman as salmon. Hilarity ensues, or at least mild amusement. Outside, the wind drops for half a heartbeat, and a pale sun winks between cloud gaps. The girl nearest the door glances up, her face lighting just slightly. Then the snow returns, fast and sideways. Tomorrow might be worse, or it might be walrus hunting weather. Hard to say. Either way, they'll wake up, push aside the skins, and do it all again. The wind doesn't just shape the mood, it sculpts the entire landscape. By morning, snowdrifts have shifted like theater curtains, revealing jagged stones and half-frozen driftwood tossed ashore by last season's storm. On the beach, a pile of bones marks yesterday's seal butchering site. Crows have already gathered, hopping sideways and looking smug. Calic heads out with a dull, wedge-shaped axe. Not for hunting, but for something much less glamorous: tool maintenance. On this island, nothing is wasted, and everything has a second act. A snapped harpoon tip, that becomes a sewing awl. A broken sled runner, carve it into a spoon or a child's toy, or in a pinch, a toothbrush. The Arctic doesn't offer many trees, which makes every piece of wood, especially driftwood, more valuable than a gold bar. Most homes have a wood hoard in the corner, twisted roots, long planks, and unidentifiable splinters. Some even smell of foreign lands, washed in by ocean currents from Siberia or as far as Alaska. The clan's tools are a Frankensteinian miracle of adaptation. The blades are made of stone, flint, chert, even obsidian if they're lucky. Some handles are whale rib or walrus ivory, others bone. Their weight is oddly satisfying in the hand, like holding a little piece of prehistory and saying, "Yep, that'll do." Today, Calic's mission is to reshape a sled runner splinter into a handle for his daughter's ulu knife. A curved blade used for everything from slicing meat to scraping hides to trimming hair. You could call it the Swiss Army knife of the Arctic, minus the tiny tweezers. But building something in this climate isn't as simple as sitting around and whittling. Every task begins with unfreezing the workshop, which is code for go outside, clear the snow off your rock, and try not to freeze to that rock. And so, Calic squats by a frozen boulder, a puff of steam rising from his breath, and begins scraping the driftwood with a shard of slate. The process is rhythmic, hypnotic, and occasionally interrupted by muttered curses when the wood splits the wrong way. Meanwhile, back inside, Naya is patching a fishing net with sinew threads. She's using a bone needle carved from a caribou shin, passed down from her grandmother. Every few minutes, she leans back and examines her work like a Michelin star chef, inspecting a soup. Net mending isn't glamorous, but it's essential. Without nets, they rely entirely on line and hook fishing or spears, which are as romantic as they are inefficient. Nets, on the other hand, can feed the whole clan. That is, assuming they survive the occasional entanglement with a very annoyed seal. The children have their own workshop, or rather, a practice pit behind the hut. Today's task: shape bone splinters into arrowheads using rocks and, well, persistence. It's a kind of Arctic kindergarten curriculum. Sharp things, small hands, lots of supervision. One boy pricks his finger. No tears, just a sniff, a wipe on his sleeve, and back to work. Here, getting a splinter is how you know you're doing it right. The tools of this world reflect the landscape. There's no metal, at least not until later. Every edge is a product of smashing, scraping, or filing. Knives from slate, harpoons tipped with antler, fishing hooks carved from narwhal tusk. In fact, scientists still argue whether early Arctic islanders developed certain tool forms independently, or whether some ideas drifted in with visitors and vanished sealers. One thing's for sure: these tools are beautiful, carved with tiny animals, swirls, and faces, not for decoration, they say, just to honor the animal that gave its body. Still, some pieces are clearly over the top. A harpoon shaft with a dancing bear etched into it. That's somebody showing off. Naya's younger brother, a wiry teenager with cheeks raw from windburn, works on a sled binding made from twisted sinew and strips of frozen fish skin. He's cursing under his breath. The sinew keeps snapping. Eventually, his sister leans over and hands him a warmer piece from under her coat. He nods without smiling. Gratitude is real here, but so is pride. A few tools hang in the hut's rafters, suspended from caribou hide thongs. These are the special occasion implements, the ultra-sharp ones saved for ceremonies or large hunts. Rumor has it one of them came from a trader decades ago. It's a bent iron blade, rusty and oddly light. No one really knows where it came from, but people whisper it's Viking steel. Sure. Or maybe it's just a rusted piece of shipwreck. The tool rituals even influence how people speak. There's a word in their dialect, unclear to outsiders, that means to fix with nothing. It's a compliment, like calling someone a wizard. Patch a broken dog harness with seal intestine and a pebble. Boom, you're the hero of the week. Tools are also a status symbol. The best bone carver in the village gets respect, extra portions, maybe even proposals. And don't think that doesn't go to their head. One elder wears a necklace of broken flint chips. Not for utility, but for the flex. He once claimed to have killed a bear with a sharpened spoon. Nobody believes him, but everyone listens anyway. As the sun barely peeks over the horizon, more a blush than a light, the work continues. Nobody rushes because out here, rushing gets you frostbite, or worse. Every scrape of stone, every twist of sinew is a promise. We're still here, still adapting, still making beauty out of bones. And just as the last tool is hung up for the night, the wind outside settles for a rare moment. The sea ice groans. A raven flutters onto the roof and lets out a long, sarcastic craa. It's either mocking them or just saying goodnight. There's something unsettling about brushing your teeth with fish bones while your breath freezes midair. But that's the kind of thing you get used to on an ancient Arctic island. Morning routines aren't about looking fresh. They're about staying alive, keeping gear in working order, and occasionally squeezing in some human dignity between gusts of wind. As dawn smudges across the horizon like a half-remembered dream, the family rises again, bundled in thick, fur-lined layers. Naya pulls a caribou hide hood over her head and starts the day with what passes for grooming, scraping yesterday's oil from her cheeks with a flat stone and wiping it off on a chunk of reindeer moss. Voila, ancient exfoliation. Kalak, meanwhile, rummages for his best mittens, meaning the pair with the least number of bite marks. His routine is predictable: check the sled runners, scratch the dogs behind their ears, and relieve himself behind the hut where the wind chill turns everything into performance art. But not everything is rough and rugged. Inside the hut, Naya lights a tiny oil lamp carved from soapstone. It burns slowly, fueled by rendered seal fat, and casts a soft orange glow against the walls. The lamp isn't just for light. It's part warmth, part stove, and part mood setter. The glow is calming, the crackle comforting. Well, until someone knocks it over. Food comes next, again, more for function than flavor. On today's menu, frozen chunks of dried char soaked in snowmelt, followed by boiled walrus fat. Sounds terrible, tastes still pretty bad, but the caloric math checks out. And in this cold, nothing matters more than energy. Even hydration is tactical. No fresh streams here, not when everything is frozen solid. Water comes from melting snow, filtered through a slab of moss or animal skin to catch the floating specks. And by filtered, we really mean swished around until the chunks settle. After breakfast, the day branches out. One of the older boys heads toward the cliff's edge to collect bird droppings. Yes, really. In small quantities, guano is used to tan hides and even clean cooking pots. The stench is breathtaking, but the elders insist it kills flavor ghosts. Whatever that means. Nearby, two women kneel in the snow to scrub seal guts with flat stones. This is not punishment. It's a delicate and very necessary process. Scraped intestines, once cleaned, are sewn into translucent parkas or waterproof window flaps. Imagine wearing a jacket made of cling film that also survived a blizzard. Surprisingly effective, surprisingly noisy. While the adults toil, the children gather sea ice shards to grind into soap. A mixture of ashes, snow, and seal fat makes a gritty paste that works wonders on blood-stained hands. Kind of. It's less clean and more less dirty. In this world, morning chores double as community performance. Everyone sees what you're doing, how well you're doing it, and whether you're using your cousin's better spearhead without asking. Etiquette still exists here, even without dining tables or tea kettles. Some rules are spoken. Don't whistle at night. It invites spirits. Never sleep with your back to the door. It's disrespectful to visitors, living or otherwise. And if you spill oil from the sacred lamp, you have to apologize aloud, or else the sea gods get uppity. Others are learned the hard way. Like the time Kalak's brother once yawned during a shaman's story and was assigned 3 weeks of toilet trench duty, digging shallow ice pits and marking them with sticks. Highly prestigious. Even hygiene, yes, that exists here, is handled with quiet rituals. Deodorizing, for example, involves rubbing charcoal dust or dried herbs into the armpits. It doesn't exactly scream fresh, but in a world where everyone smells like blubber stew, it's the thought that counts. And let's not forget, the cold hides most odors anyway. Your nose is too numb to notice, and any particularly ambitious stench gets sucked away by the wind like gossip down a hallway. One mainstream geography fact that still catches outsiders off guard. The Arctic isn't always just one uniform freeze fest. Some island microclimates are weirdly forgiving. Volcanic heat pockets, sea currents, and even buried methane vents can create patches where the snow melts early or the moss grows thicker. These become prized real estate, even if the ground smells faintly of sulfur and doom. Scientists still argue over whether ancient Arctic communities intentionally settled near these warm spots, or whether they just got lucky. Either way, those rare oases made a big difference, especially in mornings like this, when every second outside your blanket is a betrayal. By mid-morning, measured mostly by gut feeling, the family regroups. Kalak has repaired a cracked dog harness using reindeer sinew and what appears to be an old hair braid. Naya has organized the hide pile by thickness, with a small note to herself in etched stick figures. Yes, that counts as writing here. The fire is stoked again. Someone tosses on a dried clump of Arctic willow, the only shrub stubborn enough to grow here. It burns fast, it smells weird, and it's better than nothing. And in all of this, there's a rhythm. Every day isn't unique. In fact, they're all painfully similar. But that's part of the comfort. The island teaches patience and endurance, and how to boil the same 3 ingredients in 7 different combinations and call it cuisine. Outside, the sky remains a flat gray, like someone forgot to paint it properly. Inside, the oil lamp glows brighter, casting flickers of orange on fur-lined hoods and soot-darkened cheeks. No one says it out loud, but this is a good morning. No one's frostbitten, the roof hasn't collapsed, and breakfast stayed down. In the Arctic, that's about as 5-star as it gets. The wind rattles the sod house like a disgruntled ghost with unfinished business. But the roof holds, the fire flickers, and everyone inside continues what they were doing. Because, on ancient Arctic islands, you either trust your architecture or you move somewhere warmer. And warmer isn't an option. Let's be clear. Nobody here is building gingerbread cottages or Pinterest-worthy chalets. Arctic homes are designed with one goal: don't die. That said, there's some serious ingenuity involved. Calic's family doesn't live in a storybook igloo. Those iconic dome structures are great under specific conditions, but for most islanders, especially on windier, rockier patches of land, something more durable is needed. Enter the sod house, part earth, part driftwood, part mammoth rib, if you're lucky, and all survival. The construction process begins in a pit, literally. Builders dig into the permafrost to create a semi-underground floor, which provides natural insulation from the screaming ice devils outside. Walls are stacked with rocks and turf, sometimes reinforced with bones, clay, or even frozen fish packed in for waterproofing. Disgusting? Maybe. Effective? Definitely. And then there's the roof. This isn't your lightweight tent canopy. It's a layered masterpiece of driftwood beams, sealskin membrane, and overlapping sod bricks. When it rains, which does happen in the brief summers, the grass sprouts. So yes, technically, you can mow your house. Over time, families add little flair. Naya has decorated the entry flap with carved charms, bone figures for safe hunting, braided hair for fertility luck, and one suspiciously bird-shaped trinket no one talks about, probably a joke. Hopefully. Inside, the space is multifunctional and weirdly cozy. The floor is packed dirt, flattened and smoothed with oil over time until it shines like stone. Animal skins line the sleeping benches along the edges, and the center holds the hearth. A wide, shallow bowl of soapstone where the family lamp lives, always lit unless the weather's truly dreadful. Ventilation is courtesy of a single hole in the roof, roughly the size of a boot. If the wind hits just right, it whistles a note somewhere between distant flute and angry owl. It's strangely comforting. There are no rooms, but there is zoning. One corner holds the dried meat, another tools and netting. The sleeping bench doubles as a seat, and the family's most valuable items, metal tools, carved amulets, maybe a rare wooden spoon, are kept in a pouch tied to the rafters, high enough to avoid mice, dogs, and curious toddlers. Ah yes, mice. Even in the Arctic you get squatters. Tiny rodents with thick fur and a death wish skitter along the beams. They don't steal much, but if you drop a scrap of fat, it's theirs before you can blink. Scientists still argue whether these rodents were native to certain islands, or came along with early traders or shipwreck survivors. Either way, they've adapted. Some even store seeds in hollow bones, which occasionally sprout in the house walls. Free gardening. Sometimes homes are connected by tunnels, shallow crawl spaces lined with snow blocks or whale ribs. These links allow families to visit neighbors during storms without dying halfway there. A blessing during social visits, a curse during clan disputes. He's crawling over again. On larger islands, communal buildings pop up. Longhouses that host dances, weddings, or heated arguments about fishing rights. These structures use the same materials, just on a grander scale, with extra whale bones for prestige. If your front door arch is made from twin tusks, you've made it. Calic's brother lives in such a longhouse with 3 other families. The setup is part cooperative, part chaos. Privacy comes in the form of strategically hung seal intestines that rustle when crossed. Basically the world's saddest curtain. And let's not forget mobile homes. Yes, Arctic nomads had them. Lightweight skin tents, called tupik in some dialects, made of caribou hide stretched over bone or wood frames. Quick to pack, easy to pitch, and occasionally carried by sled dogs. These were used mostly in summer, when inland trips for hunting or berry picking made moving essential. Though Calic prefers the solid safety of his sod house, he still keeps a rolled tupik behind the hut, just in case the weather ever gets too weird, or if he needs to escape family drama. Modern visitors might scoff at these ancient homes, comparing them to caves or huts. But here's a geography fact you can't ignore. In terms of energy efficiency, a well-built Arctic sod house performs better than some modern cabins. Its insulation, airflow, and thermal mass are perfectly suited to the local environment. Even today, architects study them for passive heating techniques. Inside, life unfolds slowly. Meals simmer over the hearth. Stories echo off the stones. Children nap with their cheeks pressed against the warm flanks of their dog companions. And occasionally, something weird happens, like the time the roof grew mushrooms. Turned out it was a gift from a rival clan. A joke, a threat, a recipe, no one's quite sure. When night falls, though it's been twilight all day, the family piles together on the sleeping bench. They drape themselves in layered hides and tuck hot stones under the blankets to trap heat. The oil lamp dims but stays lit, its flame flickering like a heartbeat. No need for locks, the cold is the only real thief out here. And besides, if anyone tried to break in, they'd have to wrestle the sled dogs first. Good luck with that. The house creaks in the wind. A puff of snow sifts down the smoke hole and lands silently in the fire pit, vanishing in a hiss. Someone snores. Someone else kicks them. Outside, the stars blink above a frozen ocean, and the little sod house glows like a warm lump of defiance against the Arctic dark. Dinner isn't just a meal, it's an event, a balancing act between fuel, flavor, and survival instincts. Out here, food must be calorie-dense, long-lasting, and capable of withstanding a 100-mile-an-hour wind if dropped. Flavor? That's negotiable. Tonight, Calic drags in a frozen haunch of something ambiguously seal-like. Naya takes one glance, gives a nod of approval, and gets to work. She's the clan's unofficial food technician. Her specialty? Boiled fat, but don't underestimate it. She's turned blubber into an art form. She slices off the fatty layers with her ulu knife, revealing glistening ribbons that shimmer like wet silk. Then she tosses them into a soapstone pot, adds snow, a pinch of dried algae, and sets it atop the low flame. Within minutes, the hut fills with a smell somewhere between melted candle and unwashed sauna. Delicious, depending on your expectations. The kids gather around with hollow-eyed anticipation. Dinner is a highlight, not because it changes, but because it doesn't. Food here is dependable. It's the one thing that hasn't been blown away, frozen solid, or eaten by a raven. And make no mistake, fat is king. In the Arctic, a diet low in carbohydrates and sky-high in fats isn't just trendy, it's required. The human body burns through energy at triple speed in this kind of cold. Without fat, you'd shiver into a popsicle before dessert. If there was dessert, there isn't. Each person scoops their portion with a carved spoon or just fingers. They chew slowly, savoring the warmth as it slides into their bellies and spreads like liquid courage. Calic grunts approval. Naya smirks. She knows she nailed the fat-to-fish ratio this time. But the real treat? A slab of fermented seabird, buried last season in a moss-lined pit and finally aged to what some might call maximum character. The process involves stuffing whole birds, bones, beaks, and all, into a sealskin, sewing it shut, and leaving it to rot just enough. A delicacy, allegedly. One bite in and your eyes water from both the flavor and the existential crisis. Scientists still argue over whether this fermentation technique was driven by necessity, taste preference, or accidental food poisoning, rebranded as tradition. Whatever the origin, it works. Kind of. And no one's died, recently. Alongside the main dish, there's a handful of preserved kelp dried to a leathery crisp, and a small bowl of snowberries. The berries are a rare find, picked during the fleeting summer and hidden in a carved stone jar behind the hut. They're bitter, tough, and full of seeds, but their sourness cuts through the fat like a miracle. For drink? Melted snow infused with pine bark, or on lucky nights, aged fish broth. It's more of a sipping experience than a thirst quencher, but in a world where everything else is chewy, it feels downright elegant. As the meal winds down, someone pulls out a snack bag. An actual stomach lining dried and filled with cubes of frozen fish fat, seaweed, and the occasional dried beetle. Don't judge. It's portable, dense, and more nutritious than most modern protein bars. And yes, there's usually a beetle lottery. Whoever gets one is expected to make a wish. There's no table. People sit cross-legged on hides or lounge against one another. Utensils are few, and plates are optional. It's communal eating in its purest form. Fingers, shared bowls, and the unspoken rule that if you take the last piece, you better have caught it yourself. Every now and then, someone tells a food story about the biggest fish ever caught, or the time a rival clan served soup so bad it started a 3-year feud. Laughter fills the hut, echoing off the sod walls and lingering like steam. The dogs outside growl at a passing fox. No one moves. If the fox is dumb enough to approach the sled, it's on its own. The family is too full, too warm, and too comfortable to care. One geography fact that often surprises people. Most Arctic islands host an astonishing diversity of edible marine life. Fish, mollusks, seabirds, crustaceans, even certain types of jellyfish can be harvested and dried. But getting them? That's the trick. Sea ice, tides, and weather patterns make every fishing trip a calculated gamble. The clan's fishing spot, a rocky outcrop with a narrow inlet, is only usable during certain weeks. If the wind's wrong, the waves will drown your net and shame your family name. But if conditions align, it's like a buffet line of char and capelin flopping into your lap. Of course, not all food is hunted or gathered. Some is traded. Salt, for example, isn't always available locally. In its place, they might use powdered kelp, dried blood, or smoked driftwood ash. Sound awful? It's an acquired taste, or more accurately, a tolerated one. There's also a quirky favorite among the kids, bone marrow popsicles. Split a caribou leg, scrape out the marrow, pack it into a hollow reed, and freeze it into a chewy, slick tube of fat-laced joy. Unwrapping it feels like opening a birthday gift. If your birthday took place in a snowstorm and the gift was edible goo. As the meal ends, leftovers are carefully packed away, if there are any. What's not eaten is tucked back into the cold cache, hidden from scavengers and labeled with a carved stone. Not labeled as in seal steak, more like don't touch or I'll steal your boots. Cleanup is fast. Someone tosses bones into a pot for future broth. A child licks the bowl. Someone else throws the sealskin wrapper into the fire. It hisses, curls, and disappears. No waste, ever. The lamp burns low, bellies are full. Jokes are muttered, then trail off into yawns. Food, as always, has done more than nourish. It's restored morale, reinforced bonds, and temporarily silenced the ache of the cold pressing in just outside. Tomorrow's meal will look a lot like this one, and that's okay. Repetition is survival. And in this hut, survival is a team sport, preferably played with lots and lots of fat. After dinner, the mood shifts. Not sleepy yet, not exactly energized, just thawed. It's that rare, sweet spot between full stomachs and frozen toes, where conversation stirs and the night opens up like a snowdrift with secrets. The clan turns to leisure, though leisure in the Arctic doesn't mean lounging with a piña colada. It means keeping your hands busy, your voice low, and your mind sharp, ideally with a little laughter and very little frostbite. One of the girls picks up a bundle of sinew and begins plucking it like a harp. It's not music exactly, but the rhythm is soothing. Across from her, Naya unrolls a long, rubbery seal gut, freshly scraped and clean enough to read a book through. She lays it flat over a stone slab and begins slicing it into narrow strips for stitching. Seal gut is the Arctic version of plastic wrap, light, waterproof, and almost indestructible. Once it dries, it'll be sewn into window covers, cape hoods, and decorative fringe that whistles in the wind. It's also surprisingly fun to work with, when not freezing your fingers off. The kids, meanwhile, engage in a time-honored ritual, wrestling. But this isn't the WWE kind. It's controlled, strategic, and full of hilarious grunts. Two boys lock arms in a seated position, feet pressed together, and try to pull each other forward. The winner is the one who topples the other. The loser usually blames bad moss traction. Across the room, Calic sharpens a bone needle while humming an old tune about a fox who married a goose. The song ends tragically, as most Arctic animal ballads do. Still, it gets a chuckle from the room, especially when someone mutters, "Should have married the walrus, more stable." Games in these communities aren't just entertainment. They're training, memory tools, and sometimes stealthy matchmaking. In the back corner, a throat singing session begins. Two women stand face to face, gripping each other's arms, and take turns making rhythmic, guttural sounds. It's not singing in the traditional sense, it's more like vocal jousting. Each tries to throw the other off rhythm with unexpected breaths, tempo shifts, or absurd noises. Snorts, gulps, bird calls. The first to laugh loses. The stakes, pride, bragging rights. Maybe a bigger scoop of marrow at breakfast. And this is the beauty of Arctic leisure. It's never just for fun. Throat singing sharpens breath control for cold air. Wrestling teaches balance on ice. Even gut scraping becomes a team-building exercise when someone inevitably slips and splashes fish juice in their own eye. Nearby, two elders begin a storytelling duel. One starts a tale about a man who turned into a polar bear. The other interrupts with a correction. No, he was eaten by the bear. He only thought he became one. The debate spirals into wild gesturing, bark laughs, and exaggerated impressions of confused spirits, wandering the tundra in bear suits. Storytelling is essential here. It passes down survival tips, clan histories, and the unwritten rules of the land. You don't just learn how to spear a fish. You learn why you should never spear a fish during a full moon while whistling. The ghosts get jealous. One geography fact often overlooked: these remote Arctic islands weren't always as isolated as they seem. During summer months, sea ice would break apart just enough to allow for visits, canoe trips, dog sleds, or even foot crossings on slush-covered bridges. That meant stories could travel, morph, and evolve. Some games from the mainland show up in altered forms. Tag becomes a stealthy snow hide-and-seek. Dice games are played using carved knuckle bones. And dolls, made of driftwood moss and the occasional narwhal tooth. Don't worry, she's adorable, if a little bitey. Scientists still argue about the social function of these leisure activities. Were they mostly instructional? Did they reinforce hierarchy? Were they sublimated forms of conflict resolution? The truth is likely all of the above. In a place where resources are scarce and neighbors are also your cousins, fun can't be just fun. It has to mean something. And it does. Laughter binds the group together. A single joke, retold by 5 different voices, becomes folklore. A game won twice in a row becomes legend. That time, someone got stuck in the seal cache and screamed for an hour before realizing the flap was open. Eternal comedy gold. But not all quiet moments are noisy. Sometimes after the games, the hut falls into that sacred post-activity hush. Naya leans against Calic's shoulder, eyes half closed. The kids drape themselves like sleepy seals on the floor. Someone stirs the fire. Someone else just breathes. It's in these in-between spaces that real bonding happens, where silence isn't awkward but earned, and where even the crackling fat in the lamp seems to whisper, "You made it through another day." Outside, a gust shakes the hut, but no one flinches. The warmth inside is thick, sticky, and full of soot, like living inside a giant wool sock. The walls are plastered with drying hides, bundles of herbs, and tiny charms carved from walrus tusk. One charm dangles above the fire, a tiny seal with wide eyes and no mouth. It's said to protect against hunger, or maybe it's just cute. Eventually, one of the dogs pushes its way inside, curls in the corner, and starts snoring like a tiny snowplow. Someone throws a gut scrap its way, fair is fair. The fire burns lower, the last game ends, and the clan lets the quiet settle in, thick as fog, soft as hide. In this world, leisure is serious. Play is survival, and laughter is proof the cold hasn't won. Dating, it turns out, still happens even when the world outside is frozen solid, and everyone smells vaguely like smoked fish. On these ancient Arctic islands, love isn't a luxury. It's just another form of strategic alliance. But don't worry. There's still room for awkward glances, blushing cheeks, and the occasional misfired snowball flirtation. It usually starts early in that murky stage between childhood and full adult responsibility, right when a young hunter first successfully snags a fish solo, or when a girl sews her first full sealskin parka without needing someone to fix the sleeves. That's when eyes start lingering just a second longer than necessary. Romance here isn't exactly candlelit dinners and long walks on the beach. Unless your idea of a romantic stroll includes carrying a harpoon and checking for polar bear tracks. Instead, attraction shows itself in more practical ways. A boy might carve a tiny whale figurine and accidentally drop it near his crush's workbench. If she picks it up and keeps it, game on. If she hands it back with a polite grunt, better luck next migration season. And don't discount the power of smell. A good hunter might rub his tunic with spruce bark or dried herbs before approaching a potential partner. It's the prehistoric version of cologne. Effective, debatable, but appreciated. Most flirtation happens during communal events. Shared meals, snow games, or long nights packed together during storms. During these cozy moments, a bold teen might sit just a little too close, casually offer a bit of dried fish, the Arctic equivalent of a love note, or start a teasing game of name-call stacking. That's when you insult someone with affectionate creativity. Fish breath is mild. Moose-faced bone sleeper, that's full-on wooing. Of course, parents are always watching, not in a creepy way, but because partnerships affect survival. Marrying well means stronger trading ties, better hunting cooperation, and fewer awkward family disputes during seal season. So if a romance begins to blossom, parents start making casual comments like, "Funny how he sharpens his spear, just like your uncle. Good bone structure too." Still, arranged pairings happen, especially among clan leaders or skilled artisans. If a girl is known for making waterproof boots that actually last more than a week, she might get more offers than she can respond to. Likewise, a hunter who consistently brings home meat is a hot commodity, even if he smells like fermented puffin half the time. But even arranged unions have their flirtation phase. The couple might be encouraged to spend time together, gathering kelp, mending nets, or tending to the drying rack. If things go well, Everyone pretends it was spontaneous love. If they argue too much, well, there's always someone else with good sinew-tying skills. One geography fact that shaped these relationships: isolation. On many Arctic islands, you couldn't exactly walk to the next village and meet someone new. Communities were small, often under 50 people. That meant your dating pool looked a lot like your breakfast table, which made things complicated. Scientists still argue about how these tiny populations avoided inbreeding over generations. Some propose rotational visits between island groups. Others suggest selective exile or interclan exchange systems. Either way, there were systems in place, even if they involved a lot of sled miles and social awkwardness. Sometimes borrowing a partner wasn't scandalous, it was strategic. In certain communities, short-term partner exchanges during festivals or long migrations helped mix up genetics and reduce tension. These arrangements were often temporary, ceremonial, and fully agreed upon. You could call it early open relationships, or just practical ice diplomacy. Naya once told her daughter a story. Years ago, a man traded his favorite dog for a wife. Not because she was worth a dog, but because it showed he was willing to give up comfort for companionship. The dog, by the way, ended up living with them both. It worked out. Weddings weren't massive affairs. Usually the couple simply moved into the same sleeping space, shared chores, and got a few teasing comments from relatives. The only real ritual involved a shared lamp flame. One partner lights the other's lamp to symbolize the merging of households. Romantic, right? And very flammable. New couples got their own sleeping bench or corner space, usually behind a privacy flap made from seal intestines or thin hide. It wasn't soundproof or odor-proof, but it was theirs, and love here wasn't always quiet. Some couples argued constantly, mostly about spear placement, dog discipline, or who forgot to reseal the fat cache. But they also laughed together, worked side by side, and protected one another from blizzards and boredom alike. Jealousy existed too, though usually kept in check by social norms. If someone made a move on a taken partner, the punishment might be as simple as being ignored for a month. Worse than exile, especially in a place with 6 eligible adults total. Sometimes heartbreak happened. A hunter might go missing. A promised match might fall for someone else. There were no breakup songs, just silence, and maybe a louder than necessary scraping of fish scales during dinner. But love always found a way. Against the chill, the hunger, and the endless gray sky, people still reached for warmth. In fur-lined huts lit by flickering oil lamps, they whispered stories, shared dried berries, and fell asleep shoulder to shoulder, listening to the wind press against the walls like 1,000 sighs. In this world, affection is action. You mend her coat. He adds an extra stone to her sleeping furs. She sharpens his spear when he's too tired to ask. And when the storms rage, they face the door together, hand in hand, spears ready, because nothing says romance like fending off a polar bear before breakfast. Children, in this frozen world, are not sheltered from the elements. They are forged by them. From the moment they can wobble on 2 legs, Arctic island kids begin a lifelong apprenticeship in survival, guided by their parents, their grandparents, and a deeply ingrained tradition of hands-on learning and very few second chances. Mornings begin with play, but even play is layered with instruction. Take, for example, the favorite game among younger children, pretend harpoon hunt. A carved stick stands in for the real thing, and a lump of snow becomes a seal. The child creeps across the ice, belly flat, mimicking the movements of their father. When they strike the snow with a squeal of delight, the adults pretend not to look, but everyone's watching. Everyone remembers their first catch. Inside the sod house, a girl sits beside her grandmother, carefully learning how to twist sinew into thread. It's harder than it looks. Too much tension and it snaps, too little and it frays. Her fingers are raw, but she doesn't complain. Not just because complaints aren't welcome, but because this thread might someday hold together her own boots when she's far from home and very much alone. Storytelling is school here. Each evening, the hearth becomes a classroom. The stories are wild, wolves that talk, icebergs that sing, shamans that turn into owls and back again. But underneath the magic, the message is clear. Be clever, be cautious, and above all, be connected to the land. One tale warns of a boy who stole from the seal cache and was dragged into the sea by an angry spirit. Another tells of a girl who mocked a starving elder and found her soup pot full of stones the next morning. Morals are stitched into the fabric of these stories, passed down like winter coats, slightly frayed but still warm. Scientists still argue whether these myths were purely symbolic or rooted in real events distorted over time. Was the seal spirit just a metaphor for sharing? Was the singing iceberg a distant memory of calving ice triggering deadly waves? Whatever the case, they've survived because they work, and because kids never forget a story where someone gets eaten. Children are not idle observers. From as young as 3 or 4, they help with real tasks, plucking feathers from seabirds, sorting fish bones, or feeding the sled dogs. Tiny hands are well suited for delicate work, and no one is too small to be useful. But there's joy here too. Kids race sleds made from bent driftwood and ribs, laugh as they tumble into powdery snowbanks, and build miniature igloos for their carved animal dolls. One boy even paints his snow house with squid ink, much to his mother's horror and the entire clan's amusement. The island is their playground, but it's also their test ground. They learn to read the sky, what color clouds mean blizzards, what kind of silence means a storm is brewing. They can name a dozen types of snow, soft as sleep, sharp as knives, crusted drifting, and black with soot from distant volcanic ash. Even animals play their part in the education. The family dogs aren't just pets, they're instructors. They teach boundary, tone, and the importance of not stealing food when someone's watching. One pup growls playfully as a toddler tugs its ear. The child growls back. Everyone laughs. Social training happens by immersion. Children learn to listen before they speak, to take turns without being told, and to read body language like seasoned diplomats. When Calic raises an eyebrow during dinner, his son instantly stops playing with his marrow cube. No words needed. Of course, not every lesson is gentle. One girl burns her hand on the oil lamp and spends the rest of the week applying frozen moss poultices and explaining the incident to every curious elder in the village. Each one tells her the same thing: now you know. But these injuries are marks of growing up. A scraped knee from chasing birds, a bruised chin from slipping on frozen fish guts, even a well-earned blister from dragging a too heavy sled. They're trophies in a place where softness can be fatal. Education also happens communally. Elders rotate between homes, sharing songs, demonstrating how to carve amulets, or telling particularly gruesome tales about star-crossed lovers turned into icebergs. Teenagers, eager to show off, might host survival contests where they boast about how long they can go barefoot in the snow or sleep outside without screaming. Spoiler, not long. One geographic fact shaping these early lives is light, or more precisely, the absence of it. For half the year, the sun barely peaks above the horizon. Children learn to live in a permanent twilight, playing in the pale glow of the moon, navigating by the shimmer of snow. It creates a sense of mystery, of magic, and also teaches them how to manage time without clocks. Meals, chores, and rest follow natural rhythms: hunger, exhaustion, and the soft dimming of firelight. When summer returns, it's chaos. Sun blazes for days without setting, and the kids go feral. Bedtimes vanish. Games stretch deep into the night. Fish drying racks become jungle gyms. Everyone smells vaguely of algae and joy. And yet, through it all, the children thrive. Their cheeks are wind-burned, their hands are calloused, and their eyes are sharp with curiosity. They are the memory of the clan, growing stronger with each season. Each skill they learn, each story they master, is a thread in the tapestry of the island. Because here, children aren't just the future, they're the daily miracle. Proof that life continues, even when the cold tries to say otherwise. Some nights never end. Not in a poetic, dreamy sense, but in the literal, why is the sun still staring at us at 2 a.m. sense? And then, just a few months later, the opposite. A black velvet sky that refuses to lift, pressing down on the island like a mood. On ancient Arctic islands, time doesn't tick. It lurches between extremes. The eternal twilight of winter, the disorienting brightness of summer. And somehow, people find a rhythm in both. During the long winter, the sun vanishes entirely. Not just shorter days, no, the sun actually leaves. For weeks or months, depending on the latitude, only faint blue glows linger at noon. The rest of the time, night. Deep, echoing, ink-dark night. In that darkness, the world shrinks. Families gather tighter. Conversations slow down. Days blend into each other, punctuated only by the crackle of the fire and the occasional sarcastic raven call outside. It's not depression exactly, though that happens too. It's more like being suspended in a snow globe, waiting for someone to stop shaking. Inside, the hearth becomes the heartbeat. Stories stretch longer. Songs get more elaborate. Even chores feel ceremonial. Scraping hides? That's 3 hours of storytelling time. Sharpening harpoons, cue up your best gossip. Children sleep more in winter, curling up in shared piles like puppies. Dogs nap beside them, the boundaries between human and animal warmth lovingly blurred. It's not strange, it's just efficient cuddling. But winter also plays tricks on the mind. Some clan members report vivid dreams, sudden irritability, or even a creeping sense of being watched. Scientists still argue whether ancient Arctic peoples experience seasonal affective disorder in the modern sense, or whether their active night culture offset it. Either way, they had rituals to help. More storytelling, more games, and very specific sleeping schedules to prevent shadow sickness. Shadow sickness isn't just superstition. It's a term for the mental fog that comes from too much dark and too little movement. The remedy? Forced walks, singing games, and, when desperate, a brisk ice bath followed by aggressive drum dancing. Effective, mixed reviews. Then comes the pivot. Around late spring, the sun returns, and it doesn't know when to stop. At first, it's cause for celebration. Children run outside barefoot. Bad idea, but tradition. The clan holds a small feast, offering dried berries and bone marrow to the returning light. Someone usually sings a song of thanks while shielding their eyes. Everyone pretends not to cry. Then summer kicks in fully, and the sun forgets how to set. It circles overhead like a nosy neighbor, peeking into your soul at all hours. People sleep with fur over their eyes. Babies scream at bedtime because nothing about the sky says sleep now. Chickens, if you have any, lose their minds. The upside, work. So much glorious, uninterrupted work. Fishing, net mending, berry foraging, house repairs. You can spend an entire day cleaning fish and still have 3 more days before your next nap. It's exhausting in the best way. But summer madness is real. After weeks of blinding light, people start acting odd. One man insists the seals are talking to him. A woman begins painting her face with berry juice every morning and winking at the glacier. Children refuse to sleep, and the dogs bark at nothing. Everyone is overtired and overlit. To cope, families build shaded huts, low, tent-like structures layered with dark skins. They become sanctuaries for naps, meditation, or just muttering quietly until you feel human again. Some elders even declare a quiet hour, where no one speaks above a whisper. It's less about peace and more about sanity. One geography fact that gets missed in modern talk about Arctic life. Not all islands experience these extremes the same way. The closer you are to the Arctic Circle, the more dramatic the shifts. Some islands get only 2 hours of twilight at peak winter. Others hover just shy of permanent night. These microclimates affect everything from diet to ritual to mental stability. And, for ancient islanders, adapting wasn't optional, it was cultural bedrock. Ceremonies marked the return of the sun. Special songs were only sung during the darkest weeks. Children were taught to measure time not by shadow but by habit. 3 meals ago, or since the last dog fed, were as accurate as clocks here. Light rituals were especially important. Lamps were lit not just for warmth, but to remind people what direction up was. Some communities even placed polished bone reflectors near the fire to keep shadows dancing. Anything to make the dark less flat, less final. And when light returned, the opposite happened. Shades were hung, reflective surfaces covered, and homes rearranged to shield eyes from constant glare. There's a certain defiance in telling the sun, "Not now." Scientists have examined artifacts that suggest some Arctic cultures built light markers, stone rings or carved posts that track the sun's strange movement, acting like seasonal compasses. Were they calendars, meditation tools, sundials for a land with no sun? No one agrees, but clearly these people watch the sky more carefully than we do our smartphones. Socially, light shaped everything. Weddings often took place in the brighter months, when travel was easier and spirits higher. Burials, if needed, were often delayed until spring, since digging through permafrost is neither graceful nor fast. Some families kept their dead in cold caves, returning later with song and gifts before final burial. And emotionally, light gave hope. Every glimmer after a long winter felt like a personal reward. Children born during sunless weeks were considered lucky. They were believed to carry light inside them, a promise that even the worst seasons pass. So yes, Arctic islanders lived by extremes, but they didn't just endure them. They learned how to weave their lives into the madness. They turned endless night into dream space, and relentless day into opportunity. And if that meant sleeping with fish over your eyes to block the sun, so be it. When the trader arrives, no one cheers, no drums, no ceremony, just the distant barking of dogs and a dozen pairs of eyes narrowing against the glare. Outsiders are rare, and they come with both wonders and problems, like comets that might bring fire or famine or iron. The trader paddles in on a long, low kayak, its hull slick with seal fat, and adorned with a feathered charm that bobs absurdly in the wind. He's wrapped in furs layered like armor, but even from a distance he looks thinner than last time. That's either good news for negotiations or a warning. Kalik greets him first, as is tradition. A silent nod, no questions, no loud welcomes. Let the goods speak. The visitor reaches into the storage cavity of his kayak and produces a single object wrapped in sealskin. He opens it slowly. It's metal, a rust-colored iron blade, dull at the edge but still unmistakably foreign. Shaped like a flattened teardrop and heavier than any bone or stone tool, it draws the eyes like fire in the dark. For a people used to scraping slate and flint into sharpness, iron is sorcery. The children gasp. One of them immediately grabs a rock and tries to sharpen it, mimicking the shape. The adults just exchange glances. Metal is rare. Maybe one person on the island has a piece, usually passed down and never used, because using it might mean breaking it, and breaking it would mean losing it forever. The trade begins in murmurs. The visitor asks for fish oil, dried char, and several strips of thick caribou hide. Naya raises an eyebrow. It's too low. The bartering dance begins. Over the next hour, voices rise, hands wave, and at one point, someone accuses someone else of fermenting brains instead of using them. Negotiations are going well. Finally, a deal is struck. The metal blade is handed over, gently, like an offering to the gods, and in return, the trader receives a sled load of food and materials. As he prepares to leave, someone presses a carved figurine into his hand, a small seal with a missing flipper, a symbol of safe travels, or possibly an inside joke. When he's gone, the clan gathers around the blade. Calic holds it up to the light, turning it slowly. There's a hush, a moment of reverence, and then, the inevitable question, what now? One geography fact that shaped ancient Arctic trade routes is deceptively simple. The sea. When frozen, it's a barrier. When thawed, it's a highway. And for a few precious months each year, certain islands, especially those closer to the Bering Strait, became crossroads. Canoes arrived from the mainland bringing obsidian, woven goods, carved beads, and yes, sometimes metal. Scientists still argue how far these trade networks reached. Was this iron piece from Viking settlements farther west? Chinese coastal traders drifting off course? Or scavenged from shipwrecks? Theories abound, each wilder than the last. But the truth is simpler. It came from elsewhere. And elsewhere is magic when your whole world is snow, stone, and bone. That night the blade is placed on a carved stand near the fire. No one touches it, it just sits. A reminder that beyond this island there are other people, other stories, other tools. The presence of iron creates ripples. Suddenly, stone knives feel fragile. Slate scrapers seem primitive. Naya examines her sewing needle and sighs. Still works, she mutters, then quietly adds a decorative braid to its handle. If your tools can't be strong, they can at least be stylish. The next day, everyone works with a little more energy. The hunter who dropped his harpoon last week now practices with extra focus. One of the older boys, clearly inspired, starts carving a model kayak from driftwood and whispers plans of becoming a trader himself. But the excitement isn't without tension. Metal changes everything. It cuts faster, lasts longer, and makes old techniques look dated. That can disrupt power balances, especially in a culture where knowledge is currency. Some elders grumble. In my day, we caught fish with bone and courage. One suggests hiding the blade, too dangerous to let young ones get ideas. Another proposes melting it down, reshaping it into smaller tools. That earns a scandalized gasp. Melt it? Might as well throw it to the whales. Eventually, a decision is made. The blade will be used, but sparingly. Calic is chosen to wield it, not because he's the strongest, but because he once crafted an entire kayak from walrus bone and a dream. He's respected, responsible, less likely to do something stupid. His first use? Carving a new set of fish hooks. Sleek, precise, sharper than anything the clan's ever seen. It's like watching magic stitched into bone. But as always, the island balances things out. That night a snow squall buries the drying rack, spoiling a week's worth of smoked meat. The dogs howl into the whiteout, and the oil lamp sputters. Some say it's coincidence, others blame the metal. Superstition thrives here. The arrival of an object so clearly not from here stirs old beliefs. The spirit of the island, the whispering winds, the faces seen in the snowdrifts, are they watching? Are they pleased or are they jealous? To appease whatever might be listening, the clan holds a quiet ritual. No chanting, just silence, shared food, and a carved offering placed at the shoreline. A walrus tusk etched with a spiral, half buried in ice. The sea groans. A crack echoes across the bay, everyone shivers. And yet when morning comes, the sky clears. The meat cache is untouched. The oil burns steady. Balance for now is restored. The blade remains by the fire, still sharp, still foreign, still reminding everyone that the world is bigger than this island, and that change, once invited, rarely leaves quietly. The lamp is dimmed, the dogs are fed, but no one dares sleep, not yet, not when tonight is for the shaman. She sits near the hearth, wrapped in layers of raven-feathered fur, and smelling faintly of herbs and smoke. Her name is Tuva, and she's old enough that no one remembers her without wrinkles. Some say she speaks to animals, others say she is part animal. Whatever the truth, she has the final say on things that don't make sense. Bad dreams, strange weather, unlucky hunts. Tonight she hums, low at first, like wind moving through whale ribs. Then louder, shaking the oil lamp and making the toddlers blink awake. She adds a rattle, bones in a seal bladder, and a slow, steady drumbeat with a carved driftwood paddle. The rhythm is ancient, mesmerizing. You don't know whether to dance or cry. Tuva's job is more than medicine. She's the island's hotline to the unseen. Spirits, ancestors, animal souls, they all answer to her, or ignore her. It's not always clear. But if your child wakes screaming every night, or your best spear breaks 3 hunts in a row, you talk to Tuva. And tonight, someone's worried. Naya's sister, Inuk, steps forward with a pouch of fox teeth and a panicked look. Her daughter has stopped speaking. No fever, no injury, just silence. Tuva nods slowly, places a hand on the girl's head, and mutters something too soft to catch. Then she pulls out her trance mask, a warped piece of bone shaped like a human face with seal eyes. She slips it over her own and begins rocking. The fire pops, the shadows flicker. Somewhere outside, a bird shrieks at night. That's not normal. Tuva sings now, voice high and nasal. It's not pretty, it's uncomfortable, but everyone listens. Even the dogs have stopped scratching. This is Arctic spirituality, not tidy religion, not temples or robes. It's a moving, breathing system tied to ice, blood, and the flicker of stars on water. There's no holy book. The stories change shape like snowdrifts, but the rules are known. Everything has a spirit, every rock, every gust, every animal, and those spirits remember. Hunt respectfully, and the seal will return. Waste its meat, and its soul will complain to the sea mother. Forget to thank the land after a safe crossing. That's how you get a twisted ankle and a month of terrible dreams. Tuva's role is interpreter, mediator, occasionally negotiator. If a spirit's upset, she might offer it a carved figurine, a splash of oil, or a song. If that doesn't work, it might take something bigger, like a ritual fast, or a solo journey across the sea ice. She once vanished for 3 days and came back with half-white hair and a walrus tusk etched with names no one could read. No one asked questions. One geography fact often overlooked. Certain Arctic islands have unusual magnetic anomalies. Compasses fail. Birds get lost. Even dogs act confused. Some believe these spots are spirit crossings, where the wall between worlds grows thin. Every clan has stories, places where shadows move without light, or where a man followed his reflection into a cave and came out aged. Scientists still argue whether these effects are caused by magnetite deposits, microclimates, or just long winters making people imaginative. But Tuva doesn't care. She's seen things, she's felt them. And if she says the drum needs to be played faster tonight, you play the drum faster. Back in the hut, the ritual ends. Tuva removes her mask and gently touches the silent girl's face. Then she whispers something into her ear and smiles. A moment later, the girl coughs and says, "I'm hungry." Everyone exhales. The room laughs. Even the baby burps as if on cue. Tuva doesn't explain what happened. She never does. But she stays by the fire that night, humming softly and watching the door like she's expecting something to crawl through it. No one asks her to leave. Spirituality here isn't separate from life. It's woven into it. A successful hunt is spiritual. A healed wound is a blessing. Even bad luck carries weight, often tracked and analyzed like weather. The shaman tracks dreams, like a meteorologist, cataloging who dreamt of whales, who saw fire in the sea, who heard their dead uncle yelling about soup. All of it means something. Or maybe it doesn't. The mystery is the point. Children are taught early to respect the other world. Don't whistle at the northern lights. They might whistle back and pull you into the sky. Don't point at a polar bear. It'll remember your face. And whatever you do, never throw hot water into the air during a storm. That's asking for trouble. Ritual objects are common. Carved amulets of spirit animals, strings of teeth from specific hunts, lamps that never burn out. Tuva herself wears a necklace made of puffin beaks, each one, she says, from a dream she survived. One is cracked. That was a bad year. Even illness is seen as more than physical. A limp might be from overwork, or from stepping on sacred ground without apology. Headaches, spirit pressure, sneezing, definitely a ghost. Probably a friendly one, but maybe not. But belief isn't fear-based, it's reverent, gentle, a constant quiet awareness that this world is shared, not just with animals and people, but with forces deeper than snowdrifts and older than ice. One boy once asked Tuva where spirits go when the sea melts. She just smiled and said, "They follow the whales." That night, as the fire crackles low, she sings again. A softer song this time. A lullaby maybe, or a warning. No one knows for sure, but everyone listens. The day begins with a scream, not a human one, but a sled dog, yelping in panic as something big and fast barrels past the edge of the camp. By the time Calic lunges out of the sod house, spear in hand and boots half-laced, whatever it was has vanished behind a snowdrift. Only deep gouges in the snow remain, and paw prints, bigger than any dog's. Polar bear. Danger here doesn't knock politely. It crashes through frozen silence, sudden and unapologetic. On an Arctic island, even the best laid plans are one hungry animal or bad gust of wind away from unraveling. The clan mobilizes. Dogs are tethered tighter. Children are herded indoors. Hunters spread out in a semicircle, scanning the ridgelines with narrowed eyes. Naya readies the emergency meat stash, not to eat, but to throw. Sometimes a bear can be distracted with a slab of blubber long enough for people to flee. Sometimes. These animals aren't storybook creatures. They're smart, fast, and quiet when they want to be. And when they're hungry, which is often, they'll risk everything. There's a local saying, when the ice cracks, the bear listens. Meaning, if you make a sound, it'll find you. But not all threats here have fur. One of the children wakes with blisters on his fingers. Small, white bumps that burst with pus when touched. Naya frowns. She's seen this before, though not for years. Some kind of infection, maybe brought by the trader's kayak or hiding in spoiled fish. The boy is isolated, his bedding burned, and a poultice of moss and whale oil is smeared on the wounds. It's not a cure, it's a guess. Illness on the island spreads like fire. One cough becomes 3. A fever today could be a burial tomorrow. With no herbs growing in this frozen rock garden, medicine is limited to what can be found, traded, or prayed into submission. Scientists still argue whether early Arctic islanders had consistent healing practices or just a vast grab bag of trial, error, and superstitions. What's clear is that they didn't wait. If someone got sick, decisions came fast. Isolate, treat, or, worst of all, leave behind. A brutal but necessary logic in a place where one infection can starve a clan. Sometimes sickness isn't even visible. It hides in the gut, in spoiled meat, in water drawn from a snowpatch tainted by fox droppings. No one talks about the time the old hunter died, screaming after drinking from a glacial runoff. They just walk further now, even when it's inconvenient. Then there are the other dangers, quieter ones, like thin ice pretending to be thick. One misstep while fishing and you fall through. The cold doesn't kill you instantly, it just slows your muscles, one heartbeat at a time, until your arms forget how to swim and your lungs stop bothering to scream. Calic still limps from a fall he took years ago. The ice looks solid. It wasn't. He was lucky someone saw, some aren't. And let's not forget the cliffs. Beautiful, treacherous, covered in loose snowdrifts that look like paths until you step wrong and tumble 30 feet into jagged stone and regret. That's how they lost a sled dog last season, and nearly a child. Even tools can turn. A cracked harpoon, a dulled knife, a frayed dog harness. Any of them can fail at the worst moment. That's why maintenance is sacred here. You don't respect your gear, it'll bite you. Maybe literally. And of course there's the weather. Storms roll in without warning, drowning the world in white. Visibility drops to zero and sound becomes meaningless. 1 minute you're walking to check the fish cache. The next, you're 2 steps off the path and can't find the door. People have frozen to death feet from home. One woman tied a bone spoon to a rope and dropped it behind her like a trail of breadcrumbs. Smart, still got lost. In those moments, fear isn't loud, it's quiet, clinical. You start counting your breaths. You dig a shallow trench in the snow and wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes until the snow buries you. That's why every child is taught how to build a snow coffin. Not a real coffin, just a compact snow shelter you can dig in minutes to preserve body heat. It's morbid, it's brilliant, it's survival. And yet despite all this, people live, thrive even, because they prepare, because they remember, because they joke about it. One boy jokes that if he dies, he wants his body used as bait for the next polar bear hunt. Everyone laughs, then they quietly promise not to let that happen. Naya stitches a charm into her daughter's hood, a small tuft of fur dyed red with berry juice. It's not just for looks, it's a ward, for luck, for protection, for peace of mind, even if the wind doesn't care. That night the bear doesn't return, but its presence lingers, a tension in the dogs, a hollowness in the silence. Tuva burns dried moss in the hearth and mutters something about the white ones always circling. She doesn't elaborate. One geography fact worth knowing. Arctic predators don't fear humans. They study them, especially on islands where prey is scarce, and humans are the juiciest slow-moving things around. Stories exist of polar bears watching camps for days, learning habits, waiting for mistakes. So the clan sleeps lightly. Spears are kept within reach. The lamp burns all night. In the morning, fresh tracks snake across the edge of camp. Close, too close. A warning, or maybe just a reminder. On this island, you're never alone. It starts, as it always does, with something petty. A missing fish, a carved bone accidentally snapped, or, in this case, a snow sculpture of a very rude walrus, placed suspiciously close to the neighboring camp's path. The message is clear. The island next door still hates them. Clan rivalries on Arctic islands aren't shouted. They're whispered, side-eyed, layered in passive-aggressive snow placement and pointed silence at communal feasts. It's not about open warfare. It's about pride, memory, and extremely long grudges that can survive 3 generations and 7 winters. The nearby clan, just a day's sled away, used to trade regularly. Fish for furs, driftwood for bone needles. But that all changed after the sled incident. No one really remembers the details anymore. Something about a cracked runner, a broken promise, and a fish stew that allegedly caused stomach trouble. The point is, relations have been chilly. Now, the 2 clans live like exes on a small island, cordial if needed, hostile if not. Interactions are limited to necessity, a shared fishing spot during migration season, or when a hunter goes missing and everyone's forced to coordinate a search party without eye contact. This morning, Calic finds the snow walrus. It's anatomically ambitious. Its tusks form an unmistakable gesture. Naya bursts out laughing. Calic doesn't. "We should return the favor," mutters one of the teens, already grabbing a stick to begin sketching an enormous, cross-eyed puffin. "No," Calic says, "not yet." Because retaliation is always measured. These aren't reckless people. Even anger is efficient. And while geography may keep clans apart with ice fields and blizzards, it also locks them together. Trade happens, marriages happen, and so do deaths. Stories float between clans like smoke, a borrowed kayak not returned, a shaman insulted in a song. A woman who fled one clan only to be dragged back in the middle of a snowstorm. Each tale comes with versions. Truth is optional, but emotion, that always sticks. Scientists still argue whether ancient Arctic clan divisions were based more on territory, kinship, or resources. Some suggest spiritual belief systems marked the dividing lines. Others point to more mundane factors like shared hunting grounds or the placement of whale carcasses. Regardless, one fact remains: people remember, and they don't forget. That night during the meal, someone brings up the neighboring clan again. "They fish on our side now," says an uncle. "They always push past the kelp line." Naya sighs. "We're all starving. There's no our side when the ice breaks." But fairness is fragile here. Resources mean survival. And if someone else takes your seals, your family goes hungry. It's not petty, it's primal. To ease tensions, a meeting is proposed. A neutral ground gathering. No weapons, no dogs. Just dried meat, some charms, and a lot of awkward silence. Calic volunteers to go, bringing 2 gifts: a carved bone comb and a pouch of dried mushrooms, valuable for flavor and vision quests. He wears his cleanest tunic. It still smells like fish, but at least it's not old fish. The other clan arrives late, as a power move. Their leader is a wiry man with eyes like frostbite and a voice like dry leather. He accepts the gifts, offers salted duck eggs in return. Progress. They sit, chew, and pretend the last 5 years didn't happen. Someone makes a joke about the snow walrus. Someone else pretends not to hear it. But underneath it all, peace hums. Because the truth is, they need each other. The driftwood cache is low this season. One clan has extra fish hooks. The other has more seal intestines. Mutual dependency disguised as mutual tolerance. Back home, the younger ones don't understand the restraint. Why not steal from them at night, one asks. The answer is simple: because next winter we'll need their help finding the narwhals. One geography fact makes these grudges uniquely spicy. Arctic islands shift, ice moves, water levels rise and fall. A perfectly placed hunting camp one year might be submerged the next. So territory isn't just defended, it's fluid. The line between ours and theirs is drawn fresh every spring. That fluidity is both blessing and curse. It forces cooperation. It also fuels jealousy. One year, your island is the best. The next, it's a windswept fish graveyard. And your neighbor? Suddenly they're hosting walrus festivals like they invented meat. Still, there are moments of unity. A birth, a wedding, a death. When Tuva, the clan's shaman, hears that a child from the other camp is ill, she prepares a bundle of herbs and sends it with a messenger. "No need to thank me," she mutters. "Just stop drawing things in the snow." Bridges take time, but they're built, even here on an island sculpted by wind and stubbornness. The next day, someone quietly leaves a carved bone spoon near the edge of the 2 camps' border. No message, no claim, just a spoon. Beautiful, unnecessary, peaceful. It's gone by morning. No one says anything, but everyone notices. Time passes slowly when everything is white, but the islanders still measure it, by tides, by the position of the sun when it shows up, by migrations and by markings carved deep into bone and stone. Somewhere near the edge of camp, half buried in snow, stands a flat, upright slab of dark rock. Smooth-faced, its surface is etched with dozens of tiny notches, short, tall, clustered in patterns. It's not decoration, it's a calendar. Calic runs a gloved hand over the stone. Each notch marks an important event: the first frost, the last full moon before the melt, the time the snow owls returned early and everyone thought the world was ending. It's not perfectly accurate, but it's surprisingly close. For a people without writing in the modern sense, timekeeping matters. You don't guess at migration season. You don't hope the ice will hold. You watch, you remember, you carve it into the bones of the earth. Nearby, Tuva the shaman kneels in front of a smaller stone. this one adorned with swirling carvings and a crude face peering up like it's been surprised for centuries. This is not a calendar. It's a god. Well, maybe. Island spirituality is flexible. The line between ancestor, animal spirit, and deity is blurry and probably intentional. This face in stone is believed to control, or at least influence, the return of sea mammals. In spring, offerings are left. Fish, feathers, even teeth. In winter, the stone is covered in snow, as if sleeping. Sometimes someone whispers to it anyway. Children are taught to respect these stones, not because they're sacred in the abstract sense, but because they hold memory. One girl calls them ice librarians. The elders don't correct her. It's not wrong. Another stone, located near the cliff's edge, is carved with a spiral. Each year, someone adds a ring to it. The outermost spiral is larger now, clumsier, a recent addition by a teen who carved while cold and impatient. It still counts. These carvings aren't just art, they're agreements, between people and nature, between seasons and storms. This is when the fish returned. This is when we lost the kayak. This is the year the bear took the dog. Even tools become record keepers. Naya owns a fishing net weighted with tiny carved bones, each marked with symbols, one for each successful catch. When she repairs the net, she adds another. It's less about boasting, more about tracking luck. One geography fact that's often overlooked. The Arctic isn't timeless, it changes. Tides rise, permafrost thaws, ice flows shift and split. Even stars wobble slightly due to atmospheric bending. Islanders noticed, adapted, recorded. That's where the Sky Watchers come in. Every clan has one. Someone with sharp eyes, a habit of staring upward, and a memory like dried hide. They track the stars. Not all year, the sun ruins that for half the time. But during the dark months, the constellations become vital. One elder, blind in one eye, but terrifyingly accurate, claims she can tell the hour by how far the tail of the fox hangs over the horizon. Others debate whether the fox is a real constellation or just 3 stars she likes. Scientists still argue whether these early people used formal celestial calendars. Evidence suggests they tracked lunar cycles, solstices, and maybe even eclipses. What's certain, they noticed, they remembered, they told stories. Eclipses especially are serious business. Once, during an eclipse, the dogs howled non-stop and refused to eat. Children cried, the oil lamp wouldn't light. That night, the clan stayed silent. In the morning, a seal washed ashore with no eyes. Coincidence? Maybe. But since then, eclipses mean a day of fasting and quiet. Even if the sun only hides for a moment, the shadows stretch further in everyone's mind. In a box tucked deep in the sod house, Tuva keeps a collection of carved bone discs. Some say they're game pieces. Others say they're a form of proto-calendar. Each has different notches, different tiny animals etched into its surface. When aligned in certain ways, the patterns resemble moon phases. Or maybe they're just very complicated tic-tac-toe boards. Either way, she won't let anyone touch them without permission. There's a fringe belief, only whispered about, that some stones speak. Not with words, but with heat, dreams, or the sudden urge to walk in a particular direction. One boy swears a rock once made him drop his spear and pick berries instead. He found a bear cub, which sounds bad, but also led to the clan adopting the orphan cub for 3 weeks. Best 3 weeks ever, until it bit someone's toe off. Still, the stones remain. Some are simple, others elaborate. Faces carved with care, lips etched to suggest movement. One even has a hole where the eye should be. If you peer through it at a certain time of year, you can see the sun rise over the whale beach. That's no accident. One teenager once tried to carve a joke stone, an exaggerated face with crossed eyes and a toothy grin. The next day, he fell through the ice. Only got wet, no injuries, but the message landed. The joke stone was quietly buried under a snowdrift. No one spoke of it again. Ritual continues through habit. The calendar stone is touched by each person at season's change. Sometimes a handprint, sometimes just a brush of fingers. Still here, the gesture says, still counting. Tuva sharpens a charcoal stick and draws a new symbol beside the hearth. A spiral with 3 dots in the center. It's not explained, it never is. But someone copies it on a driftwood plank. That's how records are made, not with books, with echoes. And as night falls and the wind begins to howl low and long like a forgotten promise, the clan gathers near the stone circle at the edge of camp. They don't speak, they stand, they listen. To the wind, to the past, to the rocks that have been watching longer than any of them have been breathing. It starts with a soft groan, not from a person, but from the ice itself. A sound so deep, so low, it seems to come from inside the bones. At first no one reacts. Ice groans all the time. It shifts, it breathes. It speaks in slow syllables the islanders have learned to ignore. But this sound doesn't stop. Over the next days, things begin to change. First, the snowmelt arrives too early. Small puddles form where there shouldn't be any. The dogs sniff them and whine. The elders frown. The island's sweating, someone says. Then the seal holes disappear. Normally, hunters know exactly where to find breathing holes along the frozen coast. Dark patches kept open by the animals below, but now nothing. Just blank ice, smooth, unbroken, like the sea itself forgot to inhale. Kalik and Naya go out with 2 others to check the ice edge. They walk past familiar landmarks, ridges, rock outcrops, old sled tracks, and then stop. The shoreline is gone, or rather, it has pulled away. The sea ice, once connected to the land like a frozen handshake, has retreated. What was once a walkable expanse is now open water, dotted with drifting chunks of old floe. The implications hit hard. No seal hunting, no stable travel, no return paths for sleds. The bridge between them and the world has dissolved. Scientists today believe the climate in parts of the Arctic went through several natural fluctuations long before modern warming. Shifts in ocean currents, volcanic ash clouds, or cyclical weather patterns could cause years of brutal cold or sudden melting warmth. Ancient communities adapted when they could, but not always. Back at the camp, food grows tight. The smoked fish stores are smaller than usual. The snowmelt seeps into the meat pit. Mold appears on the dried seaweed bundles. Naya scrapes it off with a knife and pretends she doesn't notice the smell. Tuva, the shaman, walks the island each morning, tracing her fingers across the calendar stones and whispering under her breath. She adds a spiral to the sky-watching stone, a frantic, tight coil like a panic drawn in circles. The younger hunters grow restless. We should move, one says, find another island. But the dogs are thin, the sleds are cracked, and the sea is open in the wrong direction. Even the birds are confused. Gulls hover in slow circles, no calls, no dive bombing, just silence. Then the animals vanish. Not just the seals, but the caribou, the fish, the foxes, all gone. Tuva says the spirits have taken them. They're hiding, she mutters, or they've moved somewhere colder. The children stop playing, their games become quiet. Less pretend, more preparation. One boy practices tying knots for hours, then falls asleep holding the rope. A girl refuses to take off her boots, even in bed. What if we leave in the night, she asks. One morning, a raven lands in the middle of camp, just one, unusual. It stares at Tuva for a long time, then flaps off toward the sea. She follows it to the cliff's edge and stays there for hours. When she returns, she says only, "The island's finished its story." It's hard to know what that means, but everyone feels it. The changes accelerate. The permafrost cracks near the hut's foundation. The dogs refuse to leave the shelter. One collapses. The others growl at nothing. The meat pit floods completely. Tools rust. Nets break. Even the oil lamp smokes more than it burns. The sea keeps pulling away. It's not dramatic, just constant, like a tide that never turns back. The island is becoming an island again, in the worst possible way. One geography fact about many Arctic islands: they're temporary. Some are ice-based entirely, floating land masses that vanish with enough warmth. Others are permafrost over rock, stable only while frozen. When the thaw comes, the land sinks, slides, sinks again, then disappears. People start to go. A few families leave with what they can carry: dogs, children, carved charms wrapped in gut cloth. They paddle out on skin boats, eyes squinting against the white-capped waves. No one knows if they make it. The water is rough, the sky low. Kalak's family holds on longer. They hope, they ration. Naya divides the dried marrow into smaller portions and tells stories during meals, so the children chew slower. Tuva begins sleeping outside, wrapped in only one layer of fur. She says she's waiting to hear what the ice says next. Then one morning, the family wakes to find the southern wall of the sod house collapsed. The ground beneath has shifted. Where the fire pit was, now sits a puddle, still warm, but seeping away into the earth. Naya stares at it for a long time. No one speaks. That night they pack. They take what's left: the last dried fish, the best spear, the bone comb from the neighboring clan, the only gift still whole. Tuva does not come. She stays by the stones, carving one last spiral into the calendar rock. "I'll follow when the island's quiet," she says. They don't argue. They leave in a single kayak. Kalak paddles. Naya watches the shore shrink. The children fall asleep with their heads on each other's shoulders, lulled by the waves. Behind them the island stays still. Only the stones remain, spirals, notches, faces, marking time, watching the sea reclaim what it once gave. The kayak drifts under a sky heavy with silence. No birds, no wind, just the sound of paddling, rhythmic and steady, like a heartbeat against the water. Far behind them the island begins to blur into mist. Its cliffs vanish first, then the stones, then the shore, until only a faint smudge remains, hovering like memory. Inside the boat, the children sleep. Naya hums a lullaby, an old one about the seal who forgot how to dive and became a cloud instead. Her voice is soft. The words stretch out slowly, unraveling into the breeze. Even now in the quiet, they are not lost. The ocean, once a barrier, becomes a cradle. The stars blink faintly overhead, and somewhere ahead perhaps, there is another island, another place to begin again, another flat rock waiting to be carved. The cold is still there, pressing at their cheeks, their fingertips, but it no longer bites, it just whispers. They are drifting now, carried by current, by instinct, by faith in stone calendars and bird-shaped omens, and the steady beat of a paddle moving forward. And you, listener, traveler, dreamer, are drifting too. Let the noise of the day fall away. Let the snow hush your thoughts. Let the sea carry you, not to answers, but to stillness. The island may be gone, but the story remains.